people have some special plants that they move in and out every year, and they keep them through the years. And now's the time of year when we want to think about moving those plants back inside if you don't have a greenhouse or something. And there are a few steps that you can take to make this transition process easier on the plants and yourself. The first thing that you want to do is go ahead and kind of clean the plants up. What I'm doing here, I'm clipping some of the dead foliage off of my peace lily, and you want to go ahead and clip that off. And also, while you're doing this, check the base of the plant around where leaves may have fallen down in there, and go ahead and clean those out. I've got some leaves that have fallen down in there, so clean that out. And while you're cleaning, go ahead and check for pests. And one of the most notorious places for pests to be is on the underside of the leaves. And here I've got, looks like a spider has built a web in there, so I want to go ahead and clean that out of there. And also, a lot of times spider mites will be underneath the leaves, and I've got a few that are starting here. So what you can do is either spray these with either an insecticide that's labeled for that plant or some insecticidal soap, or you can also, in the case of spider mites, just use the water from your hose and wash those out. That's the best time to do that while you've still got the plants outside. Well, in addition to monitoring for pests and things, also, usually when you have your plants outside, you fertilize them quite a bit through the summer because they have all that light and they're actually growing. So what you want to do to prepare them for that transition inside is to go ahead and leach the pot out. Just water the plant with water until you see that coming out the bottom of the pot. Here I'm putting in, and it's actually quite a bit of water. It's more than you would actually water the plant with. Just continue to pour water in there until you see it coming out the bottom. You actually want to do this twice. You fill it up, let it drain out the bottom, and then wait about 10 minutes and do the very same thing over again, and that will leach all of those nutrients out the bottom of the pot. Well, you'll also want to cut back on the amount of fertilizer that you give your plants once you move them indoors. They only need fertilizer about once every 6 weeks, and do that in a fairly dilute solution. Well, one of the other shocking things to plants when you move them inside is the reduction in the amount of light. And you can actually prepare them for this lower level of light by moving them to a shady place. And that's what I've done here. I've moved my plants back to a shady part of the porch, and I'll just slowly increase the amount of shade they get every day, and then I'll go ahead and move them in the house in about another week. Now, they may lose a few leaves in the process, but that's okay. That's just part of the stress of moving the plants, and it doesn't mean that your plant has a really bad problem, and it'll probably go away in about a week. The other thing that's very stressful to the plant is the lack of humidity inside the house. And one way that you can combat this is to get a small humidifier and plug that in the room where the plants are. Now, when you first move your plants indoors, you'll want to keep them kind of segregated from the other plants that you have indoors for about a week and monitor them to make sure that no other pests go ahead and pop up. And after a week, you can go ahead and place those where you would like to if they're in with some of the other plants that have been indoors the whole time. Well, one of the problems with having plants indoors is kind of a fight for the amount of light that there is in front of a window. And a tip that I picked up when I was in college and I only had one window was to use a step ladder like this one and place that in front of the window, and then you can stagger your plants around so that everybody gets a spot in front of the window and the light is evenly distributed. And that's a really handy way to use all that light that you've got coming in from the window. Well, one final tip is that when people move their plants in and they have drain holes in the bottom, they'll usually use a tray like this, or kind of a saucer, to put the plants in so that the water doesn't run out and all over the floor. And the thing that you want to remember is if you're going to use a clay saucer, make sure that it's glazed here, or else use a plastic saucer like this. These actually look like they're clay, but they're plastic. Because one of the nice things about a clay pot is that it is permeable to water, and that's the same for these saucers. And if you put this on your wood floor or on your windowsill, you'll cause some damage to the wood because the water will actually go through the pot. Anyway, these are a few of the tips that'll make moving houseplants indoors a little bit easier on both you and your plants, so you might want to go ahead and prepare for this before the first freeze catches you off guard.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. You can also find more recent videos on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.